she realized that she was hypervigilant, and she realized it came from a chaotic childhood. At the time, it was necessary to survive. But as an adult, that behavior, that child guardianship can disappear. It can die. It can fall away. Now you can allow out of you to be birthed your true genius. The guardian child, the gifted soul's early armor. Hi, friends. It's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me, and I'm coming to you kind of spontaneously for this episode. I have a few notes, but I really wanted to share with you something that's very personal to me personally and my work, and also I think to a lot of us who are neurodivergent and gifted. And that is the idea of being the guardian child. Now, I want to tell you a little story about this person who was a little person, and they were the oldest child in their family, and they were gifted and very sensitive. And I bet you can relate to this, either yourself or one of your siblings or somebody you know. Now, that's not an uncommon situation for a gifted family to have gifted children. But what happens sometimes is, as pain and trauma and even confusing things, like events happen that the gifted mind cannot understand as a child. And so that child becomes hypervigilant over time. Or maybe that child takes on over responsibility. I was working with somebody recently, and that is exactly what she was saying, is that when she was younger, like around elementary school time, she was seen as like a mini adult and always responsible, always knew what was going on, took care of the younger siblings and took care of things. And it was highly rewarded. And so it was looked upon at that time as if she was above her age, like ahead of her time and really amazing. And on some levels, that's true. But what people, including her, didn't realize was that she was being indoctrinated, trained, if you will, to be the guardian child. The child in the family that is the guardian of safety, that is a guardian of other siblings and themselves, like to make sure that everyone's taken care of when it's chaotic and maybe abusive or traumatic or even just confusing. And so this person, she became very hypervigilant, was hypervigilant through most of her life. And so as she went through high school and college and kept on going, she had trouble with relationships. She had trouble in some of her work, and she had trouble in other areas for life at times because of the hypervigilance and the extreme stress that she had her body under because she was always guarding and being the guardian. Now, when we started working together, she didn't realize this. She realized that she was hypervigilant, and she realized it came from a chaotic childhood. She had that part down, but she didn't realize that it was in her initial armor for her soul and as a form of protection instead of something that is healthy. At the time, it was necessary to survive. But as an adult, that behavior, that child guardianship can disappear. It can die. It can fall away simply because this person becomes an adult and heals those things. So a guardian child is somebody who is gifted, who is guarding their soul by being hypervigilant. They notice every little tiny thing all the time in a vigilant manner. And often they are over responsible, right? Responsible for much more than you would expect them to be, even when they were younger. And sometimes they take on big things. And that sense of over responsibility has a price. That hypervigilance has a price. And so she had to deal with that inner stress and that inability to rest and relax, like really on the inside. And so think about these kinds of traits as I kind of talk about how this works, because though this is a heavier episode than some, I think it's an important one, because I think that our coping strategies that we all develop when we're young to deal with the life that we maybe don't understand, or maybe things are going on that are chaotic, or maybe life is happening around us and the adults just aren't explaining it to us in a way we can understand. There's all kinds of ways these things can happen, but most often it happens when that child takes on the role of protecting everyone and managing things to make sure that everything is okay. The guardian child is often seen as the hero of the family. They're often expected to be perfect. Or they think they are, right? They're often looked at as like an adult in a child's body. So they're smarter than the average bear, or maybe, they're told they're so mature for their age. Well, they have to be mature for their age because it's survival on that level, on that neurology level. And how, especially if you're intuitive or very sensitive, so neurodivergent people who are intensely intuitive and sensitive feel things very deeply. And so you learn from a very young age, sometimes even pre-verbal, to use your intuition to attune to patterns and situations so that you can find a way to navigate through it, survive it, if you will. And so it looks like an asset. And in some levels, in survival mode, it is. However, again, the price that person paid and has been paying for all these years is quite profound. Our nervous system is always looking for threat. And so somebody who's the guardian child is always vibrating a little higher, is always looking for what's going on, is always trying to see what's happening, is disappointed easily, gets irritable easily because of the hypervigilance, because of the training and attunement to looking for what the problem is or what's happening. And so it's a very interesting situation to be in. It's a part of growing up as a gifted person, as a neurodivergent, very sensitive or intuitive person that ends up taking on the parents or the family system's dynamic. So if that dynamic is one that's chaotic or angry or hurtful or traumatic or even unknowingly that way, right? It doesn't matter whether they know it or not. It matters how you internalize it. So you could have 2 or 3 kids in the same family and everybody internalizes and integrates what's happening differently. Now, we also know by research too that trauma from generations past come down in the DNA. So sometimes those patterns that gifted people can find and see very easily are something that a guardian child will tune into and respond to, even if the pattern's not always there. They'll be ready for it because of the vigilance. Now, as we grow up, right, as we get older, this client of mine, she's a little bit younger than me, and she realized that in her early career, she was very hypervigilant, got everything done, was like really on it, didn't want to make any mistakes. And she realized, and I guess it was about a month ago or so, that hypervigilance that everyone rewarded her for being so competent was really, the competence was really a disguise for how hypervigilant she was being. So she was always ready. She had a job where she had to be on call a lot and answer after hours and do all kinds of things for her boss and other people that most of us would say, no, I'm not doing that, or that's too much, or, it's not my job description. We would say something, but she didn't. She wanted to look competent and be competent. And so she stayed hypervigilant. And so she absorbed the emotional tone, the emotional way of that company. And that, because that's what she did in her family, she absorbs it and then acts it out and does it. And so on some level, it almost becomes habitual. So we had to work a lot on what is current and what is habitual absorption of the old tone, the old way of the family system that wasn't working for her anyway. So there's so many different facets. I'm sure you can hear what I'm saying and even make a picture in your mind. And so that's when she realized that when she was younger, there was so much focus on her being overly mature and being responsible and rising to the top of her class and all of those kinds of things. It was because she was moderating the external chaos around her. So when we talked about her family life, her school life, her outside world, it was pretty chaotic. And so the way she handled it with her intense emotions and intuition was to be very competent and hypervigilant and take care of things and be a step ahead. And so people were so impressed by it. But now, years later, she's seeking assistance because there's a big price to that. There's a consequence to being in that heightened state for decades. For decades, this woman has been in this hypervigilant state, even when she thought she was resting, for decades. Even when she thought she could relax and breathe, she was still hypervigilant. She told me one time about getting a massage when she was in college, I think it was. It was a while ago, I think she said. And she was talking about this, getting this massage. And she was saying that most people told her that they fall asleep during massages. I'm going, I fall asleep a lot during my massages, or I at least kind of zone out. And she's like, I couldn't do it. I was relaxed, or I thought I was relaxed, but her mind was still going. Her mind was still moderating what was happening in the room, the music, following this, doing that. And she was not able to let her system settle and quiet. So, of course, we did some work with Safe and Sound Protocol and did some things to help settle her nervous system, to help her out, because there are ways that we can begin on a soul level and energy level to undo the old patterns. Now, some of them are kind of tricky, and we'll be working for them for a while to undo the pattern that some of it started before she was verbal. So it's not necessarily a cognitive understanding until we run into it, until we see it. So that's part of our work. And that's why I was kind of coming to you today with this particular episode, because I think guardian children who grow into adults end up with medical stuff going on, or challenges in relationships because they're caretaking and they're watching patterns so acutely that they stress themselves out, and the people around them don't know what to do with it. So they either keep a distance, or there's arguments, or things happen because the pattern is trying to repeat itself, and the guardian child is trying to break the pattern. So I have this couple I'm working with, and the husband said, I want to break the family pattern. And so he's working to break the family pattern. And so he was the guardian child in that family and took on and intuitively attuned to the chaos in order to settle it. And so to heal it, we have to get rid of, destroy, break down all those old patterns, and then let the dust settle, and then create and allow a new pattern to emerge. And that takes a lot of intense work. And sadly, a lot of people run from that. But I think it's worth it, because I think us gifted neurodivergent leaders, we're here to do something magical and amazing. And so it's time that we free ourselves from these old patterns that don't work for us. In fact, they never worked for us, because our vigilance, right? All of us can become our identity. Yeah, we can do that. I remember I've had that issue before in my past, where I used to think I had a thing with overfunctioning. Like, people said I was a workaholic. And I don't know if I was a workaholic because I would take time off, but I overfunctioned when I was there. So I think that falls into it. So I think maybe I was a guardian child, maybe, right? And then there was the emotional precognition part. And that's a hallmark for guardian children, is they can emotionally know what's going to happen before it happens. And I definitely have that. I used to be able to, when I was younger, look at the look on, especially my father's face, and I could tell what was going to happen, whether he was going to be angry and venomous or violent or happy or what. I could tell by the look on their face. And children, and generally, are really good at knowing by their parents' look on their face what's going to happen. So emotional precognition and being able to see in advance what's happening and overfunctioning are signs that you are hypervigilant. They're signs that it has become part of who you are. So if you're going to let the guardian child rest and not be so hypervigilant, and you're going to break the pattern, you have to be willing to reevaluate and assess your own identity. Now, years ago, I was doing a lot of identity work, which is when I can relate to this. And I remember one night waking up in the middle of the night, and I had all these thoughts. In fact, they were so loud that it felt like it was out loud, even though it wasn't. And it was all about surrendering who I thought I was. And I'm like, But I've already surrendered all of that, in my mind, right? And that, of course, that wasn't true, but that's what I thought then. And I remember going, oh my. And I remember hearing really loudly to surrender what I thought who I was, surrender my accolades, my degrees. And then it came down to surrender even your own name, that who you think you are isn't who you are. And at the end of all of this, what came out was that I and you, I believe, are vessels of the divine, are vessels of nature herself, that we're not separate from nature. We are part of it. And so we are vessels to create amazing things. And if we put poison in the vessel, then it taints the energy of it, the water in it, if you will. So I remember thinking that. And I remember about a week later, I was running a substance abuse treatment center. And about a week later, I was running a group. And one of the gentlemen in the group said, I had a dream about you. I said, really? What was it? He goes, in the dream, I was swimming and I swam up to a floating dock and you were sitting on the edge of the dock. And I said, okay. And he said, and right behind you were all these alabaster vessels. There was probably 50 or 20, 15 or 20 of them all stacked up. And you were just one of those vessels. Now, he didn't know that I had had that experience about a week or two, maybe before. But when he said that, for me, it was a big affirmation that the truth is myself and all of us, we're vessels here to bring goodness, here to allow the great creative energy of the universe to work with us and through us. And so once I realized that, and then he told me that in that profound dream, life has been a whole lot easier because I could break that pattern of having to overfunction and overdo. Now, I'm sure if you're identifying with this, that you're probably feeling overwhelmed sometimes and you overdo it sometimes. That's how come people like us need retreats and need time apart for a while. That's why I do retreats. That's why I participate in them and why I hold them. So like in our January retreat in 2026 that's coming up is going to be all about these patterns and transitions in ways that we can come apart for a while, reset our nervous system, and then really evaluate who we are, what our identity is as a neurodivergent gifted adult leader. So it's really going to be fun, I think. And the other cool thing, I just told people this, is that I'm bringing people in by the room instead of by the ticket. So one ticket gets as many people in the room as they want. And the hotel rooms hold 4 people comfortably because they're 1-bedroom suites with a balcony. So they're big and they're nice and they overlook the Atlantic. And so I said, we got to have shared memories. Shared memories are much more fun than going by yourself. So if you're coming by yourself, bring someone with you, bring 2 people with you on your one ticket. I just need to know the numbers because I'm feeding everybody breakfast and I want to have enough food. But I think it would be so much more fun if people had permission to bring someone that they wanted to have the shared memory with, whether it was a spouse or a relative of any kind or a colleague or a friend, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we realize that as neurodivergent gifted people, we require connection. Connection is the correction. We require connection in person with others of the same species, with other people who understand us. So I've created the retreat at a request for many people. Plus, I know they work. It's my 15th or 16th one I've done. And every time there's something magical and amazing happens, and it's never what I think it's going to be. It's always better. So check out that link in the show notes if you're interested in those kinds of things. And if you can't do this one, find a retreat somewhere. I'll be doing quarterly retreats in the North Carolina area. This annual one is in Florida. So you'll be able to connect because that will help us break the pattern of overfunctioning. That will help us realize that we don't have to be ahead of everyone else. We don't have to always be people pleasing. We are allowed to make mistakes and take care of ourselves first. We're allowed to do that. And if you're the guardian child, you might be fighting me back right now as I say that. So let's get together and have some fun. I can't wait to see you there. Now, the gifted brain and trauma also have a different kind of fatigue. Now, there have been times in my life where I have talked about being weary. And I've told people I'm just weary. Now, that's a different kind of tired than tired. That's a fatigue from being a gifted person in a world that's not meant for us. because what do? We process really fast, and we have very deep empathy. I know I have very deep empathy. I recently had a patient that I'm working with that passed away in a very tragic way, and I still feel the grief, the empathy for the family, and all of that, all of that emotion around it. It's deep, right? I feel it. We also have a sensory sensitivity. Oh my God, don't put me under fluorescent lights. That isn't going to be good. I don't do fluorescent lights very well. And there are other things I do not do. I don't do a lot of high EMFs very well. It's important that we realize that our gifted brains process and assess the world differently than a lot. And so our fatigue, our tiredness has a whole different category to it. It's not the same as when we're just physically a little tired. And then don't forget that we have a creative imagination, right? And have you ever done what I call playing dead on the highway, where we're just, making up all these stories in our head about what could go wrong? Like somebody's 5 minutes late and we have them in a hospital. We have to go find them or something. And that is part of gifted brain processing. That's part of what makes us tired. That's part of being the guardian child. And that's part of what needs to be let go of or die, if you will. So part of our work is to basically die to the old so we can live in the new, which sounds kind of scary, but it's not. It's freeing. It sounds difficult to our egoic self to say, well, I'm letting go of everything I thought I knew and who I thought I was, because who I really am is something more amazing, because that part of our ego wants to hold on to it. So there becomes this little battle. So that's why it's important to have mentors and people around us and an inner circle that remind us of who we are and where we're going, so we don't give into the egoic, fear-based stuff. Just because you look strong and you are strong doesn't mean you always have to be strong. If I've heard it once, I've heard it a million times. Well, you're strong or you're smart. You'll figure it out. You're gifted. You got it. Well, the truth is I am strong and I am smart and I am gifted and I'm still a human being, and all of us require connection with others. If you're somebody who's been a guardian child, which would be me too, okay, we can tend to be so empathic and so intuitive and so intense that sometimes it's hard to let go of that old identity, because that's all we know. That pattern could have been going on in your family line for 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 generations. It probably didn't start with you. I know it didn't start with me. So what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? How are we going to rectify the schism, heal the wound, if you will, depending on what language you want to use? But what are we going to do? First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what we believe and how it got in us, right? The if-then sentences. If this happens, then this. If the person looks this way, this is going to happen. We can see that, and we can start to look at what is happening. We can also understand that our difficulty relaxing, our being uncomfortable at certain times, and all of those kinds of things can be catalysts to help us see that we're not quite healed the wound yet, that there's still a schism to deal with. If you have a hard time being in quiet and being quiet on the inside and being alone and not being lonely, there is still work to do as the guardian child or as the gifted person who has dealt with different kinds of chaos and trauma on different levels. We want to be calm most of the time and raise our energy or have heightened energy to take care of things that are important. So that's how that works. We want to also take care of feeling safe in the world. I know there was a time, oh gosh, I don't know, this was a lot of years ago. I remember saying, this 3D world's highly overrated. There was a part of me that didn't feel safe at all. And not because I was in a bad neighborhood, safe as in a body on earth. Like it was an existential thing. And for a lot of years, I didn't even know that's what the feeling was. That's how it always was. And then I learned that, oh, that means it's because I don't feel safe. Oh, okay. And then I had the opportunity, once I had awareness, to rectify that schism. And so the path to healing, the path to rectifying the schism, is to learn how to relax learn how to break the internal dialogue and contract you have that you made consciously and unconsciously as a young person to carry on the pattern. You have to break the contract. Is that easy to do? No. Is it worth it? Yes. Do we do it alone? Never. One of the things that is an error that we're taught in this society is that we should do all this kind of work by ourselves. Grieve alone, take care of it alone. You're smart, you can figure it out. That's not how it works. We can only rectify and heal these patterns in community, in conversation with at least one other human being. And that's why there's power in support groups and power in therapy and power in other kinds of groups. Because when two or more come together and our prefrontal cortexes align and the mirror cells light up, we then have the opportunity to break generational patterns that are living in us, that it's time to let them go. Our body has to be able to feel safe in order to do that. And so it takes safe people around us. So sometimes you might have to go for a little while not talking to somebody maybe that you're related to, or a kind of, I call it going into hermit mode, like I will go off and be in hermit mode and only really interact with people that I must interact with in order to do the work. And then I come out on the other side. And nobody has to know but the people helping me with the work, because we all need people. And I've even told a client of mine yesterday, said, well, you're always growing and you're always changing and you're always coming up with new and exciting things for all of us. I said, right, because we're all in this together. I'm not done. Nobody's done working on ourselves or healing. And if somebody says they're done, then we really know they're in trouble, because we're always meant to be expanding. It's time that we woke up a little bit here. And we want to understand that being the guardian child needs to be separated from who we are as an adult. And that's not easy to do, because if you've played that role, like this client I was telling you about, she's played the role for about a half a century, maybe a little less, but around that. And so it's hard for her. It's going to be hard for her to drop it a little bit. But the truth is the guardian child has outstayed her welcome. And it's time to move her on to something else. So the actual adult self can stand in her sovereignty. And we're going to get there. I'm sure we will. And we have to allow people to support us. Like she lets me support her, and she has other people in her world that support her. And so it's so important that we have that support that is not smothering, support that is spacious, where, she can cry with me if she wants, or she can laugh, or we can talk about something completely unrelated for a few weeks until we get back to it. It's okay. It's totally okay. What matters is that she feels safe, and it's kind of nice and squishy and soft and sweet and spacious, because the hypervigilance and the difficulty in the hard patterning is best healed by having it be introduced to what soft, spacious beauty looks like. And so she gets to experience it with me and with other people. So she's able then to heal it better. Right? Does that make sense? I hope it does. Anyway, it's a big job, that path to healing. And we want to have people in our circle. So if you need help with it and you want me to help you, just schedule a get to know you call, and I'll be glad to help you with it. It's a lot of work, and it takes dedication and focus. And I accept the people to work with who are motivated, who really want to affect change in their life, because we have to break the internal contract, and it's not easy. I know how to do it, and we can do it. It's just you have to be willing, and you have to be honest. And so as the guardian child, she doesn't get to run the show anymore. And in the couple I'm working with the husband, I looked at him and I said, the guardian child in you does not get to run the family anymore. It's driving everyone crazy. Where's the adult who's educated, who knows how to take care of things? They have children. And so it was kind of funny, because he looked at me and kind of shook his head a little bit and said, oh, I get it. And then he could see how the patterning of his childhood that had him guarding and taking care of everything was coming up again as a father. And it was getting in the way of his family. So he's working through that. but he's working through it with me because I'm soft with him. I am not yelling at him. I'm not telling him what he has to do, like the father figure of his youth. And I'm giving them space to see how it's going to look as an adult. And so it's really kind of fun to see what his emerging and my other client, her emerging identities are. Because when they stop guarding and they don't have to be that anymore, the real essence of them gets to show up in all of its beauty. And so I think it's really, really, really amazing to be part of that process with people, to witness the transformation, to witness the intergenerational breaking of patterns that cause all kinds of cattywampus situations. That's what I call it. Anyway, it's tricky. So if you've lived your entire childhood as a guardian child, hear me when I say that you don't have to do it anymore. You don't have to stand watch. You're not required to be the sentinel. Your brilliance and who you are is beautiful. It doesn't have to be tainted with vigilance. You are safe on planet Earth. The adult you does know how to handle things. And that safety is something you can continue to cultivate in your own nervous system. You can learn to allow yourself to be soft and supple and calm. Your spirit can learn how to rest. And your gifted mind, when freed of the vigilance, becomes the birthplace for your true genius. So once the vigilance is moved aside, now you can allow out of you to be birthed your true genius that's underneath it all. Imagine you're a genius already, and then more of it gets to show up when you allow the vigilance to be laid to rest. So remember that some of you have had, somebody said this to me today, I think I'm behind. I'm getting too old. I'm behind. And we're never behind. Just like everything in nature, it happens right on time, even if our ego says we're behind. Our ego lies to us a lot. Our ego is not our amigo. You're not broken. You're simply unwinding a generational role that was given to you that you didn't ask for. And you were too young to say no, thank you. So now, as an adult and as a neurodivergent, aware human being, you can say no, thank you. So this is your time to come back to yourself, to the real you, underneath the vigilance and the people pleasing and the fear and the stuff, underneath being that guardian of the emotional well-being and safety of your family that you inherited from generations before you. Now, if you're not the guardian child, you probably have one in your family, because I think most of us do. So I hope this episode has supported you and helped you see that some of the journeys that we have in our awakening, in our transformation, in our healing, in our leadership, in our businesses have to do with unraveling old systems that no longer work. Because after all, if you're running a business or you're a CEO or you are somebody leading other people, understanding these things about yourself and others is vital to the success of the organization and the success of all the people. So as always, feel free to reach out to me and schedule a get to know you call. I'm happy to serve and help in any way I can. My new book, Care for the Neurodivergent Soul, is out, and the workbook is going to be out here in about 3 days. So everything is there for you. I love to support you. I love to create things for you. If you have a topic request, please put them in the comments. I will read them and be sure to do a show with the title that you would like, the subject you would like. And so remember, until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. It's okay to rest and soften. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.